I don't know if you've heard the story before or not. On Yom Kippur, as the rabbi was reciting the prayer, acknowledging the sins of the community's leaders, asking God for help to lead the congregation, the rabbi fell to the ground and cried out, "God, I am nothing." The congregation was shocked. They'd never seen anything like that, the devotion. And the chazan saw the congregation's reaction, and he fell to the floor sobbing uncontrollably, "God, I am nothing." Again, the community was wowed by this sign of intense prayer and devotion. And the shul president saw this, and he fell to the ground and said, "God, I'm nothing." And the rabbi turns to the chazan and says, "Look who thinks he's nothing." Look who thinks he's nothing. Our parsha this week condemns idolatry, the worship of a false god. The irony today is that even as paganism has become something very small and relegated mostly today to hipsters and small corners of the world, even despite that, I think idolatry may actually be growing. Because even though people don't believe now in many gods as they once did, more and more people believe in things that they shouldn't. They elevate things to the level of a deity. Too often we elevate things to this ultimate place of value in our world, in our society, in our culture. They become for us an idol. Often it can be money or it can be status. It can be power or popularity. We can elevate appearance to the state of idolatry. There are a host of idols that exist in our world today. For some, it's technology or science or medicine. Idol worship, I really think, is more prevalent today than it ever has been. The irony is, even atheists I've seen partake in idol worship. As they belittle people and insult others because of their religious faith or beliefs. How could you believe in God or an afterlife or prayer or whatever religious act it is that they're choosing in the moment to insult? I'm a big fan of open debate and discussions. And I love those conversations when I watch them online, the big debates between big rabbis or ministers or priests and theologians along with an atheist or a scientist on the other side. But so often in our culture today, we belittle each other. When you forget about the human being, the person you're speaking about, in service of the belief you're trying to promote, whether it's religion or atheism, whether it's liberal politics or right-wing politics, whether it's Israel or Palestine or any other topic in our world, when you elevate that to the level where you don't see the person you're speaking to, that's idolatry. The greatest idol of our time today, I think, is arrogance. Thinking we are always right, thinking we are the best or that we know everything. And it's the most dangerous idol there is. It is far too common, and it's incredibly damaging, not just to ourselves, but to our relationships. There's a warning about it in our parsha this week. Ki teitzei lemilchama al oivecha. Should you go out to battle against your enemies, the Lord your God shall give them to your hand, and you shall take captives from them. What does that have to do with arrogance, you might ask? It was in the commentary of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. Rabbi Nachman, who was the great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism. He lived in the late 1700s, the early 1800s. And he asked the question on this very first verse in our parsha, who is the enemy God is talking about? Shehu hayetzer hara. This is the evil inclination. The evil inclination. And he says that God despises all kinds of arrogance, quoting another verse from Mishle, from the book of Proverbs. Toavat Adonai kol geva lev. All arrogance is an abomination to God. And he says the most dangerous type of arrogance we see in his world today, and I think we see it even more today, is Jewish arrogance. When ritual observance becomes a source of arrogance, because that Yetzer Hara tells us we're better than someone else because we wear talit, or tefillin, or we go to minyan, or we go to synagogue on Shabbat, or we keep Shabbat at home, or we keep kashrut. Whatever our level of observance is, even if it's just once a year, we come to Yom Kippur for an hour. We look over at those who don't even show up for an hour and say, what kind of Jews are they? Look at me. I'm better than them. I'm holier than them. And that's our Yetzer Hara, he says. And it's not really bringing us closer to God, but closer to an idol. And the truth is that arrogance, what he's touching on here, comes from many things that are good causes. Observing mitzvot, participating in Jewish life is a wonderful thing. But not when you do it to elevate yourself. Because it doesn't bring you closer to God, he says. It brings you closer to yourself. To idolatry. And that arrogance we see in many good causes. In the environment, which is important to care for, but there are those that do so to the point where they look down on anyone who's doing less than they are. Political activism, charity, and all sorts of parts of our society. But arrogance is dangerous. I think it's the number one killer of marriages and relationships. Because when one partner becomes arrogant, when they think that they're better than the other person, when they belittle the other person, that's incredibly hard for a relationship to come back from. That type of damage is incredibly difficult to repair. And we see that kind of damage not just in marriages and romantic relationships, but that kind of arrogance tears apart all of our relationships with our friends, with our family, with our colleagues. But in fact, more than just the breakdown of relationships, arrogance causes all sorts of other damage. What happens when we become arrogant? We become complacent. We stop improving because we already know what is best. What more could there possibly be to learn? There have been studies done about business leaders, and even those who are high performers, the best at their companies, when they start to get a sense of arrogance, their performance goes down. They have an overestimation of their own abilities. They stop taking input from others that would help them improve to even greater heights. I always found it interesting that the best athletes in a sport have a coach. They have a trainer. They have people that they're listening to for advice and help, even if they're better at playing the game or the sport than that person is. Because that's how you get to be the best, by always learning and always growing. And arrogance prevents us from seeking help. Even when we know we need it, we don't ask for it because we assume if we don't know the answer, nobody else does. Arrogance is idolatry. And the holidays are a chance for us to examine our deeds. A chance not to dwell on sins of the past, on our mistakes of the past. The high holidays offer us an opportunity to look forward to the year to come. To think about the chapter that is yet to be written. But the only way we can write in that a better chapter than the previous one is if we're honest. And that takes humility. To look back on our year and ask what were our mistakes in our relationships with our family and our friends, with our partners, in our relationships with our colleagues at work, in our own performance in our jobs, or our hobbies, or whatever it is we want to improve on, our values, our midot, the character traits that we express in the world. The holidays are an opportunity to write the next chapter, to grow, to do better, to be better. But we can only do that if we pull aside that veil of arrogance, if we can honestly admit and assess our flaws and our failings. I usually end each week, I try to end with a prayer. This week I want to end with a prayer that I didn't write myself. It comes from my favorite book, this small book of little prayers written by Rabbi Nachman. Dear God, let us feel close to you. Grant us satisfaction with our lives. Let us rejoice in that closeness, and let us turn that satisfaction into a sense of self-worth, not one based in arrogance or in feelings of self-importance, but a humble self-esteem rooted in holiness. This Shabbat, as we prepare ourselves for the Chagim, I ask that we take that prayer to heart, that we think about the idols in our lives, and we make sure that we rise not to a place. Humility doesn't mean not having self-esteem, but a self-esteem that is rooted in recognition of the holiness in us and in others. A self-esteem that's not based in arrogance, but a self-esteem that will allow us to grow in the year to come, 5784, into the best versions of ourselves that we can be. Shabbat Shalom.